Kathy Reed informative speech on how to bake a cake. Layered cake, sheet cake, cupcake. Sounds good, right? Who doesn't like a good old-fashioned homemade cake? However, in the hustle and bustle of today's society, many people turn to the easy step 1, 2, 3 box cake mix. But I'm here to tell you, whether you're a beginner or a seasoned cook, you can make a homemade cake with just a few simple ingredients that you probably already have in your kitchen. According to Betty Crocker's cookbook, cake baking can be considered an art as well as a pleasure. And like art, it is exacting. Because you're working with delicately balanced formula, the ingredients must be measured exactly and the directions followed carefully, and the correct pan should also be used. And if you stick to these rules, you can be sure to have success in cake baking. Now, let's bake a cake. Pan selection is key to a successful fluffy cake. Betty Crocker's cookbook says, for good size, shape, and texture, always use the pan that is recommended in the recipe. A cake baked in a pan that is too large would become pale, flat, and shrunken. A cake that is baked in a pan that is too small or too shallow will bulge over the sides, therefore you only need to fill the pan half full. Also, shiny metal pans are recommended for cake baking because they reflect the heat away from the cake and produce the light brown tender crust that we all like. Once you have the appropriate pan, preparation should be done to keep the cake from sticking to the pan. This is done by greasing the bottom of the pan and the sides generously with shortening. Then dusting the pan with flour, making sure to shake the pan to remove any excess flour. Then you're going to set the pan aside. The next step is to read your recipe carefully, preheat the oven to desired temperature, and gather your ingredients. Most ingredients to a homemade cake are everyday ingredients that you already have at home. All of these ingredients should be kept at room temperature. For a red velvet cake, FoodNetwork.com suggests the following ingredients: 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 1.5 cups of sugar, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of fine salt, 1 teaspoon of cocoa powder, 1.5 cups of vegetable oil, 1 cup of buttermilk at room temperature, 2 large eggs, 2 tablespoons of red food coloring, 1 teaspoon of white distilled vinegar, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. When measuring these ingredients, it is vital to be precise. MarthaStewart.com says the best way to measure flour and all dry ingredients such as sugar, baking soda, salt, and cocoa powder should be done by spooning it in the measuring cup and then leveling it off with a knife or an offset spatula. Now, let's make a batter. Once you have gathered all of your ingredients, preheat your oven to temperature, which is usually 350 degrees, and prepare your pans. After your pans are prepared, it is time to incorporate the ingredients together to form the batter. This is done by sifting together all of your dry ingredients, such as your flour, sugar, cocoa powder, baking soda, and salt. in a large bowl. In another large bowl, you're going to combine your wet ingredients, which is your oil, buttermilk, eggs, food coloring, vanilla, and vinegar. Next, you want to combine with a standing or handheld mixer by alternating the wet ingredients with the dry ingredients and ending with the dry until they're just combined enough to form a smooth batter. Then you want to divide the batter into prepared greased pans and place in the oven until done. PillsburyBaking.com suggests the toothpick method when testing the cake for doneness. You stick a toothpick in the middle of the cake, and if it comes out clean, then presto, your cake is done. Now, let's move on to the best part, the frosting. Once your cakes are out of the oven, you place them on a cooling rack so that they can cool completely. This will also help the frosting stick better. You start by placing one layer onto the serving platter, and this can either be the loaf from the pan, or you can actually cut the layers so you have more frosting to cake layers. Then you want to take the frosting and put an evenly layered amount of frosting on top of the cake. Once you have an even layer on top of the cake, then you're going to take your next layer, turn it upside down, and lay it on top of the existing layer. Then you will take your frosting and you will begin on top of the cake, making sure to ice the cake. You would continue this until you have the entire cake layered, and make sure to smooth it all the way around. And voila, you have a cake. With just a few simple steps and ingredients, it's easy for anyone, whether seasoned or beginner, to bake a homemade cake and throw away the box cake mix.